Hey everyone! Today I'm making MeeMaw's Bootleg Cider. This is a soap, one of the first soaps I made within my first year of designing and making soaps with melt&pour. One of my, not very first, but it was in the first series I made, which were all drink soaps. I put the useful information as far as what I'm using up on the screen, so I'm not going to be reading that to you or reiterating it. Hopefully I can just ramble here for a long time because this is a long video, and I do have plenty of useful information for you about the creation of these and some of my thought processes and some tips. Like what you just see there going on with the sparkling mica. You can use any kind of sparkling mica you want. Sparkle Plenty. There's a variety. I don't know. There's so many different names. I can't think of them all. But a lot of different companies have those types of micas. And the white one, I don't add a lot. What I'm trying to do with that look, it's not to get a sparkly apple, but to capture the look of when you cut into an apple. There is a little bit of sparkle to it. Not in the conventional, like this is glitter kind of sparkle, but cut an apple, or, next time you're cutting an apple, take a look at one in the light. You're going to see a little bit of sparkle there. One of the other things I did in this is, as you saw, I included a small amount of clear, and that's because I didn't want it to be super white looking. There is a bit of translucency. All you have to do is cut a really thin slice of apple to know that. So have fun experimenting with apples after this. But as I'm trying to replicate slices, I didn't want it to see through, but I did want a little bit of transparency to it, or translucency, really, just so they didn't look off. I think when you see them in pure white, they look a little wrong. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But this is the first time that I have ever tried to take a soap and make a miniature. Not the first time I've made miniatures of my own soaps, for sure. And you'll see more of that, I'm sure, down the road if you haven't already. This is the first time I've ever tried making them in the same loaf. And I just wanted to see if I could do it. I didn't need a ton of either one, so I just wanted to see where we go with it and see how that works. It is the first time I'm making a miniature sized of MeeMaw's Bootleg Cider soap, though. This is and so one of the things I thought I'd talk you through with this is, how do you make a miniature version of your soap? Well, there's lots of things to consider. You always have to consider, of course, what mold you're using. And, so to downsize, the first thing you need to do is find a smaller mold. You don't always have to find smaller embed molds, but it helps. I've done both. This one, if I hadn't have had this little miniature circle sample size soap mold ready, I've had it just to make samples with. I've used this mold for so many things. It makes great little suns and moons, full moons, and other moons too, because you can always cut the little crescent out of it if you want not a full moon. But there's so many things you can do with circles, obviously, but it was the perfect size for the MeeMaw's minis, and I really didn't want to do it, but you could easily pour out a very thin layer in one of your flat molds, either a loaf mold or slab mold or something like that, and cut with a cookie cutter. And I do have little round cookie cutters in various sizes, again, because circles are in so many things. They're a design element in many things. So I have a little metal cookie cutter set on hand that I occasionally use, and I was going to pull it out and use it for these, but then I remembered my little sample mold, and it was a little easier, just saved me a step. As if you don't know already, I am very messy, so you're going to see red soap slung everywhere. This is, you saw me kind of dipping the first couple down in and trying to see if I could just roll it in that. That didn't work for me. It might work for you. For my coordination and the way I like to control the soap, it didn't work so well for me. So I just used the stick to paint that on there. You could probably use a paintbrush, you know, depending on the size and whatever you're doing. But I didn't. I just used the stick, and it worked well for me. Pretty sure that's the first time I did it. I used a little mini spatula, which worked just as well as the stick. So I, of course, had to try the rolling again with the big one and realized that it just didn't even go on there as well. Had to fix some spots, and then went back to my weird method of applying it with a stick. Keep in mind, with everything I do, all of my techniques, there's so many approaches to designing a soap and creating embeds. And I know this because I've seen many of you doing a variety of different techniques to create some of the same things I have, and they look just as great. So, you know, don't be afraid to experiment if you don't like my method. This is the way I did it. It causes me a couple of extra steps because I am working fast. That's one of the reasons it's a bit sloppy. I want it to stick well, so I want it to apply it while it's hot enough to stick and adhere to the outside rind, whatever you want to call it, the peel, to the outside. But that means it slops all over. So there's a cleanup step. And I kind of think it gives it a really cool look because it really looks as if you've sliced through the apple, because the peel now looks sliced as opposed to if you just paint it on with a paintbrush and you're perfect with it, which I wouldn't be, by the way. Then you might not have that clean cut look. So I stand by what I did, but it doesn't mean you have to. I do, after a few of these, start speeding it up so you're not just watching me clean up apples. But I do want to take a moment while the cleanup is happening because there's nothing really exciting to talk about going on the screen. If you are getting anything from this, I think you'll see a little more excitement in a minute when I cut the center of the apple. But if you find this valuable, if you have enjoyed any of my videos and you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. Please consider giving a like to this video and to any that you watch. I know you hear all the YouTubers say it, and there's first drop number 1. Actually, I've probably dropped about 6 times that got edited, but I didn't edit that one. Anyway, you hear YouTubers saying it all the time. Please like, subscribe, share, all that. They're not just saying it because it's a thing you say. It really does help. It helps the algorithm. It helps other people to see my videos, which means it helps to share knowledge and creativity and helps to promote the world of glycerin soap, melt&pour soap, which I truly believe is a fabulous art form. It's become pretty much therapy to me, but I've done a variety of various art mediums, and this has certainly become a favorite of mine, if not my very favorite. I don't know, hard to say, but I certainly love it. Not a lot of art mediums can you combine art and a sense of smell or sense memory with smell, along with a use. So that's one of the reasons I love it. So cleaning up here, and as you will see in a moment, I'm going to use some cutters to create the inside look of where the seeds go. If you've cut an apple in horizontally rather than vertically. I believe that's the way it goes. One way, if you cut it one way rather than the other, you're going to see a star with the seeds. I've seen a lot of artwork done where people paint the apple slice or the apple half with that star and make like a print. That's so much fun. I used to do that kind of stuff with my kids when they were little. And this little cutter here, it's just a fondant cutter. I got it ages ago, so no, I don't know the brand. I know I found it on Amazon, and I know you can find some like these on Amazon. All you have to do is Google fondant cutters or mini fondant cutters, and you're going to find a plethora of little shapes that you can use. There are metal ones too, I'm sure. I tend to buy the plastic ones because they're more economical. And I've never had one break on me, so I am kind of careful with them, but they're pretty sturdy. So that's the first one in the larger soap, and this is how I made my first soap, was the larger ones, the MeeMaw's Bootleg Cider. It's actually not a star. It kind of looks like a star. I think it looks a little bit more like the apple seeds star to me, but it's a flower. It's a 5.5 petal flower shape that came in a variety pack of flower shapes that I got. And they came in several sizes. This was the smallest I had, so I couldn't size it down for these little mini slices. And so I just used a little mini star that I had. I have a set of 3 or 4 different sizes of stars, and this is the tiniest one that I have. And you'll see in a minute I pull that out. It's a little bit different style use. You'll see some that are like the flower that I did, that are just, you press it right in, and then you have some that are a little spring loaded, which is the little star that I have. You also may have seen me use those in my mini galaxy soaps, which is another soap that I miniaturized. And that's another one to look at. You don't have the big version yet, but you will eventually, probably after the holidays. But that's one way you can alter the sizes of your embeds, is not only the embeds themselves, but by various cutters that you can buy. Many of those cutters come in sets of several sizes. You'll also find that a lot of the embeds, at least some of the ones that I find on Amazon, come in various sizes. I have probably 3 sizes of mermaid tails, a couple of sizes of flamingos. I have I have a couple of sets of things like little butterflies. They're really thin and delicate little molds, but they work if you're careful with them. And I can create 3 different sizes of butterflies. So if you look, you might find what you're looking for and be able to downsize. Don't totally discount the idea of hand cutting some things down. If it's a simple shape, you can kind of just trim the edges a little bit. And you can look for molds themselves that have various sizes, because some of them do. The mold that you are using for your main your main shape of your soap, that is a little easier done than the embeds. And there you think outside the box and look for a variety of different ways to do it. When you see the end of this, you'll see I am putting these all in one loaf soap. And so you're going to see half of the loaf is full-sized and half of them are the miniature. So that just is a way to cut the loaf differently to create smaller soaps. I've done the same thing with my crystal soaps. Sometimes just turning the direction you're cutting can alter the size and shape that if you want to change it up. Many of your simple shapes, you're going to find a variety of sizes in as well. But don't be afraid to go different. if the design itself is really kind of stands on its own, you can put them in different shapes and they still work together as a unit. I've done that with my flamingos. I have my original that are in a large rectangle, and I've done some in small circles. Same with my mermaid tail. I did a tiny, tiny circle because I had a tiny, tiny little mermaid tail, and I didn't use as much of it. I cut it off. Hopefully, if you have any questions about what you're seeing up there, please feel free in the comments. The texture is just, I'm wanting the texture of the cinnamon bark as we're rolling those up. The glycerin, for flexibility, it does help you have a little bit more time to roll them up. Doesn't mean you don't have to work carefully, and you want to work while they're warm, but it does maintain that flexibility a little longer. Okay, so back to the sizing. I did also, the first one I think I ever did a miniature like that of a soap is I took my Galaxy Adventure soap, which is a great big rectangles that I actually created in these purple loaves. It's one of the first soaps I created as a kind of the bottom, using the bottom of the loaf and creating the soap upward. So you're looking at the top of the soap rather than like in a loaf when you're not really looking at the top of the picture. So those are great big chunky rectangles, and those were my first. And then I just thought, can I make it smaller? And all I had to do was find smaller little balls to make planets from, and I did. And everything else pretty much, it's the design, it's the way you swirl the colors, it's the color choices you're using, it's the overall design. I still, in the larger ones, I did use some of the larger star cutouts that I have, whereas in the little ones I only used the small and medium sizes that I have. But it's still the same look, and if you put them side by side, they look great. They look great together. And a lot of people, you can tip for those who sell things, you can put those in sets. I started to say kits. I don't know why. You can put them in little sets and suggest that people have one in their shower or bath and one in their sink, and that way they match, especially if they have a themed bathroom and you have a soap that goes with that theme. It's a really cool gift and a really cool purchase for somebody who's looking to decorate their bathroom, either for the holidays or just for their own theme that they have in their bathroom. I don't do that with every soap. I'd go crazy. But just a few of my more iconic soaps and soaps that that are more highly decorated, or decorative, I should say. But not all of them. I pick and choose. What do I have? Again, what do I have as far as molds go? What what ideas do I get? You got to kind of follow the creativity. When I had the idea for the Galaxy Mini, I never thought I'd end up doing the miniature flamingos, or certainly not the miniature MeeMaw's apple cider, or the spiced pumpkin iced latte that I do. I did those in minis before I did MeeMaw's, and I don't have a video of that yet. I may, if I run out of the stock I have now, I will probably create more before the end of the season, which means I will create a video for it. So most likely, hopefully. But I'm gonna I think things like that, having pairs, is fun. I'm gonna do a little fun, not really a contest, but kind of a competition between I don't know if you've heard people talking about who likes spiced pumpkin or pumpkin spice. I don't like pumpkin spice. I like apple cider. One is better than the other, and there's this whole camp of one being the best, and what do you vote for and all that. Well, I say both. I love both, but there are a lot of people who have strongly feel that one is superior to the other, and so I'm going to ask a few of my. Within my reach, I'm going to ask people to vote. And if they want an extra vote, they can buy a mini, and that their vote goes for the soap they buy. But there will be free votes, of course, on Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully I'll be able to do that soon. My whole week was shut down a little bit with vertigo, so I'm really behind. But you see here, I'm back to it. The little ones are harder when you're doing the cinnamon roll. I mean, I hope you can see what I'm doing, because I'm not really telling you, but I am showing you. I guess my biggest suggestion that you don't see in the actions I'm doing is use that soap as soon as it sets up. Pull it out and use it while it's warm. It's going to be much easier on you. I don't know if you saw in the beginning stages of making the little ones, I'm kind of playing with size because I haven't done the little ones before. So I kind of fooled around a little bit with it. Don't be afraid to do that within your own soaps, whether they're creating miniature size or not. Too many people are afraid to play. And I think that's one of the things I love about Melt and Pour soap so much is you can play. I don't tend to play with an experiment with a great big slab mold. I have on occasion, and luckily it turned out in my favor, but something that I'm really unsure of, I'm usually going to try in a single mold or something small. If it's a loaf soap and you're not sure how the design will come out in a loaf, because that's a little tricky and it's a little different angle that you're looking at, and just a different approach to the design, find yourself a small, one of the cube kind of small loaf soaps. I think mine is like 4x4, something like that, a 4x4 cube, 4-inch cube soap. That I can do loaf soaps in and still get a couple of full-sized bars, 2 to 3, depending on how thick I cut them. And if I end up with 2, then I end up with some sample sizes as well. But it can give you an idea of what something's going to look like in a loaf soap, and gives you a little bit of wiggle room to play without using, 42 ounces or more than 42 ounces, depending on your loaf soap size. And when I give you ounces for this is just what I happened to use. It you may have to adjust things for your loaf size. That's always, I guess it should be a given, but it isn't, because some people want to follow exactly what you give them. Oh, see here, 42. That's that's what I use. That's not what's in the bucket. I did end up adding more, but I had it kind of pre-weighed and set aside, just because I can't melt it all in one bucket. And it wasn't enough. It's not enough to put into a melter. So that was just the way I choose to do it, is divide it into 2 and add to it, which is what I did later. This mold, yeah, it's about, I think it says 40 ounces. I'm not sure. But if you're weighing, you're going to have to go a little bit more, because soap weighs more than water. And typically they're giving you a mass rather than a weight measurement. So you may have to play around with your own soap and see how much your soap weighs when you fill the soap. You could always do a loaf and see how much that weighs after. Always account for things that you have sticking up, because that adds to it. This is a real quick note on the color of this soap. This is Crafter's Choice. I know I told you earlier. It's the apple honey ice wine soap. It's a premium soap from that I purchased from Wholesale Supplies Plus. It is darker than when I bought it. And that's just because it's old. It's not so old that it's not usable. There was a discussion recently in one of the soap groups I'm in about how old is too old. Well, somebody pointed out, well, it says 1 year, because they say use within 1 year, that kind of thing. They have to put an expiration date on it. Just keep that in mind. But soap doesn't really expire. What you may find happens if you let melt and pour soap sit around is it may dry out a bit. So how that affects you is it affects the way it melts. You might have to take the temperature higher. It might be thicker. It might set up quicker. You can add a touch of glycerin to help combat that a little bit. I wouldn't go crazy with it. And I'm not going to tell you how much. You'll have to experiment with that on your own. But I have been successful with adding decent amounts of glycerin to soap. As you may have noticed with the fact that I disperse my activated charcoal when I use it and titanium dioxide. I use both of those dispersed in glycerin. And sometimes I'm pretty heavy with both of those in the soap. And I've not had one set up poorly or not set up or ruin the soap in any way, shape, or form yet. So hopefully I won't. But I tend to push the boundaries sometimes with things like that. There are guidelines for how much of anything you can add to a soap, but I really need you to pay attention to what your brand says because they're different. I've seen a variety of different percentages from different companies. So some may say 2 to 3%, some may say 5 to 6. Some may say 5 to 6 with a little caveat of if you add that much in oils, you will compromise the lather or may compromise the lather, etc. Adding glycerin, I guess if you add a huge amount, you might compromise the lather. I haven't done that yet either. So keeping that in mind, if you're using an older soap, those are some of the main things you need to worry about. The other thing is the color might change on you. So be aware of that. This one happened to color to the perfect shade I wanted. And when I made these the first time, and that soap was new, and I've used it for other things. This is probably the third lot of it I've bought because I do really love this soap. And I've used it many times. Keep in mind, it's fragranced already a little bit. It's not overwhelming. You can still add fragrance, and I did. But it needs to complement the fragrance that's there. The fragrance, I believe, is apple honey ice wine. It's the basic name of it. They do sell this fragrance on their website on its own as well. What I'm pulling out there is just the skin forming on top as it's cooling. And I do want the skin there because it is helping to hold up these embeds that I put in, which is why I pour a little cooler for these. I do want that to start setting up so that my embeds will stay put. Now, it does take a lot of patience, and you may have to move them more than once, as you'll see me do in this particular soap. You can, and I have done in the past, pour a very tiny bit in the bottom and kind of anchor some of the embeds that are standing up. I did not do that this time because I was just working a different approach with these, and it still worked. Yeah, I did have to come back and move them a little bit. There's where patience comes in when you're doing more intricate soaps, just like the patience of painting the apple peel and cleaning that up, all that. If you want fancy soaps, most of the time, there are some that are definitely easier than others. But if you want something a little extra, sometimes you have to put in the extra time. Now, I'm not charging the same as I do for a soap that doesn't take as much work. You have to keep if you are selling, you have to keep that in mind. And if you are gifting, keep that in mind as well. You know that person that is getting your gift is getting something very special when you've put in this much time and effort, and they know it. If they see something like this and you tell them that you made it by hand, they're going to be impressed. And they're worth the time, and they know that, and that's what makes it a very special gift. So, oh gosh, I know I cut myself off and left off something that was important to say with the placing the embeds, but basically I allow that skin to develop. I cut it You will cut through it and pull some off occasionally, but the cutting through is just to give your embed a place to kind of sink down into, and leave the rest so it's held up. If you don't cut it, you just cram it in there, that skin is going to pull everything around it down into it and really mess up the design. So that's why I use a knife. It's not a super sharp knife, but it's sharp enough to cut through a skin of soap. And that helps me to place them. And the skin that is not cut, that is kind of still kind of creating a net like almost across the top, helps to hold them in place. You don't want to just put them in place and run away and think you're done. You do want to watch them a little bit. That's why one of the reasons these soaps take some patience. I guess that's where I was when I cut myself off there. Making a point with the cinnamon sticks real quick. You saw me use the apricot seed powder for texture, and the micas for color. I have in the past used cocoa powder for color. You can as well. If you use too much of that, that will bleed for sure. It feels nice on the skin. But one of the things I want to warn you against doing, and you'll see toward the end here when I add more apricot seed powder to the top, is that's my look for cinnamon. Why? Because you don't actually want cinnamon in your soaps. I know a lot of people like to put it in. People like apples and cinnamon, and they want to put cinnamon's natural and adds a little extra scent and goodness in many people's eyes. But cinnamon can be very sensitizing to many people. So if you are not sensitive to cinnamon, you might not be aware of that. But it can really, for me, anything with cinnamon oil is going to turn my skin bright red and burn. I can't even use close-up toothpaste because anywhere, well, I can, but anywhere that toothpaste touches outside of my mouth is going to be bright red and burning. So I choose not to have that clown look. And even though I love cinnamon so much, now I can eat cinnamon just fine. I just can't have it on my skin. So please avoid doing that. I guess all I'll say about those little apples as I put them in, I mean, you saw me pour a little bit of extra soap onto that skin. The skin was thick enough to basically hold it up. And the soap I poured wasn't super, super hot. You don't want to pour really hot soap on the skin because it's just going to melt right through. You see, I'm kind of cautious with what I'm pouring over this skin now because that soap is too hot to just dump on there. And I just pour it in stages, in layers. And I'm cutting through on the sides a little bit because I don't like it to look, and there's really nothing wrong with it, and it kind of ends up looking like that anyway, but I didn't want it to look like two distinct layers. One of the reasons I pour that glitter in the middle is I'm kind of going for a little swirl along that. It didn't really swirl this time, but they still ended up cute. It did on some of them. It didn't on all of them. You can see that it's kind of a line. And they're fine. It's just what I prefer. I was thinking, kind of picturing like either a swirl of caramel or something like that, some kind of topping you would put on there. And of course, I take any opportunity to use a little bit of something glitzy if I have it and it goes with the flow of the soap. And this one definitely works with a little bit of glitter, I believe. Now, I didn't want the whole thing glittery because I wanted to maintain the clarity of the wine soap. By the way, this soap, this base, does have wine in it. I am not affiliated with Wholesale Supplies Plus or Crafter's Choice. Not that I wouldn't want to be, but I'm not. I just love their products, and so I'm always going to be promoting their soap because it's my favorite. Doesn't mean you couldn't do this with another soap, but you'd have to really be aware of the melting point because you could not pour, with some of the other brands, you could not pour at the lower temperatures I'm pouring at because it would just be a hard mess and set up completely in your pitcher by now. Here comes the apricot seed powder. And again, it really does a good job of mimicking the look of like cinnamon or pumpkin spice, any kind of little spices you want. It works very well for that. And for cutting, I tried to speed through this some because it's a real tedious task. It didn't end up working like I wanted. I did cut up the part of the video where I tried to use Uncle Andy's, which is sitting right there on my left. It works really well for tall, but when you have embeds that stick out the side, like mine do, it doesn't work. I mean, unless you wanted to cut them off, which I didn't. So I didn't use Uncle Andy's this time. I was very sad about that because that meant I had to pull out I love my double-handled cheese knife. Don't get me wrong, but it's just I'm not good at it. I'm not great with cutting with it, especially a loaf soap. I do have a few pointers for you with that. Maybe to help make it a little easier, but and one of them is mark your soap so you can see, and mark it on both sides. You saw me mark it on one side here. I did go back later where you saw that little break. I did go back and mark the other side so that I could have something to anchor it with on one side and then match it up on the other. Otherwise, I would have ended up with really wonky soaps. But I have the biggest problem going from top to bottom and keeping it straight there. And I'll kind of point out as I go here. This is showing my cut in 1.5 speed. So it's a little faster than normal, but I wanted you to have at least one that you see how slow I go. This is even faster than I go, but I go slow. And you can't see the angle right now because of where the camera is, but I line my eyes up right over the top of the blade, and I don't want to see any part of the blade sticking out from that, or I know it's angled. So at any point, if you see that, then you know the angle is off. You obviously have to start the blade off that way, because once you start cutting, you can't really alter that very well. Most times, at least I can't. So the closer we get to the smaller ones, you'll see there's one of the, I think it's the last cut. I can bring it closer to the camera and so that and move my head to where I can see what the camera's seeing, because it's far more important for me to see it while I'm cutting it than the camera. But as you see, it gets to the bottom, it's pretty straight that way. I did, as you see, it's a little angled there on the top. So I didn't either I didn't do my measurements right, or I didn't line my knife up correctly, but it's just a little bit. Okay, so this one, I mess up a little because I can't quite see. Even I bring it closer, I still can't quite see. So it goes where you could kind of see that blade. It went outward. Not the end of the world. Again, handmade soap. People like to know that it's handmade and not, pumped out in a machine. And people appreciate that. And so it's not even really what I'd call rustic looking. It just doesn't look like it's machine made. Yeah, I did it again there. At the very end, you'll see one where I can kind of get that lined up in my eyesight and the camera at the same time, showing you what I'm looking for when I'm doing that. Doesn't make my cuts perfect, but it makes them better. Trust me, if I were doing this faster, and I did speed this up quite a bit after that first one. This is like 3 times the speed. Okay, so that's what I was going for, see how I'm lining it up so you just see one line? That's how you get a straight cut downward. Then I switched to a smaller knife for this because I have a little better control. But those weren't perfect either, and I wasn't worrying about it. They're just not perfect. Some are a little angled. I could have measured that out. I didn't. I just eyeballed it because I don't think it matters to most people when they're getting a handmade product. So I really thought that the minis came out super cute. I was very pleased that I was able to do both in the same mold. I got 3 of the big ones. My typical bar is about, 1 1/4, maybe a little bit bigger than that. It's not quite 1 1/2. That's too much, but about 1 1/4, maybe 3/8 of an inch wide. And the minis come out to be 1 inch. So I took my mold is 8 inches long. And so I cut it directly in half as far as lining things up. You saw my measurements were right at the halfway mark. And I did 3 because normally I would get 6 out of a mold like that. I got 3 full size and then 8 little guys, because there's 4 inches left when you have it. And so you've got 4 1-inch little bars, which are perfect to me for the minis, or you could call those sample sizes, but they're really bigger than a sample size, which is why I'm kind of selling them. I'm not just throwing them away. They're kind of the size of a normal bar soap, but I make really big soaps. So for me, they're minis. For you, they might be just the right size. You can make the entire loaf that way. I've done that with my pumpkin spice iced lattes. And they came out so cute. And yeah, I'm going to, like I said, you'll see those together very soon. I know this one took an eternity. I meant to say it at the beginning, I hope you saw the chapters. I hope by now people know to look for those. There are named chapters. You can follow what you want. You can scoot ahead if you really don't feel like watching me roll cinnamon sticks. You can do that. So hopefully something in here stuck with you, or at least entertained you. I don't know. Quick disclaimer on my hands. Every time you see me doing close-ups, my hands look atrocious. I want you to know my hands, I am older than, I'm over 50. But my hands look a lot better than that in real life. But I have to make sure the soap looks clear and looks like it would look in real life. The light from the camera just doesn't want to pick it up on its own. I spritz it with alcohol, which helps quite a bit, but I also turn the clarity a little bit up in the actual footage. It's just an adjustment that helps it to focus better and helps me not have to be a perfect filmmaker, because I'm not. So this helps. We don't have perfect lighting. We don't have perfect anything. But you can make adjustments, and I make that sacrifice, and it makes my hands look atrocious. So keep in mind they don't look that bad, because the soap does. I don't want people to think my soap makes their hands look like that, because it really doesn't. I really rarely have to use lotion of any kind. My skin looks a lot softer than that, and definitely feels a lot softer than that. But we're here for the soaps. So, and that kind of on that vein, I think I started talking about it being a wine soap. If you buy this soap at all and use it, please make sure you let people know it's a wine soap. It's fabulous on the skin. I can't say it does anything on it or for your skin, because then we'd be talking about cosmetic or medical type classification. But if you let them know it's a wine soap, it does create a really special lather. And so a lot of people do know that wine is nice on the skin. It's in a variety of different face products. So there's something to be said for calling it what it is. And the wine soap is nice. I was really trying to get a nice still from because I like to take stills from these. And here comes Mr. Soap and Such is going to say hi. He was trying to help me figure out how to get the lighting better on that. And then he wanted to say hi because he hasn't said hi in a while. So, and some of you are so kind to ask about him and see how he's doing, which is really nice. He appreciates that. And he appreciates all that you are doing for me, as do I. I appreciate your viewership. I appreciate your comments and your likes and your questions. Please, if you have questions, let me know in the comments. I will try to answer anything I can. And I'm hoping that you are able to learn something, or like I said, enjoy it, at least be entertained by it. As always, you are what keeps me going. You're the reason I do these, and I'm loving doing them. If you have specific soap requests, I can't guarantee them, but I can always try. This one was a request to have some of my drink soaps made, which is why I ended up making this one. So I hope that you guys have an awesome, amazing day, and thank you for stopping by. Have a great one. Bye.